What's up, MetaNerdz? These Galactic Alliance ships continue to prove to be interesting, bold, and a bit silly, but maybe you'll think that the cool factor makes up for all this, and why this one is the most unique and actually kinda makes sense, to the point that I could see it being brought into future Star Wars material. And be sure to use the link in the description and pinned comment to get 10% off everything at geekygrotto.com. They have an amazing selection from fantasy to space and military, real-world buildings, and parts to build anything you could think of, 10% off using our link. The Sabertooth-class assault/rescue vessel has these very interesting two protrusions, which are of course why it gets named after the saber-toothed tiger. But it's deeper than that. These really are teeth. It is described as, quote, its grapple-equipped teeth able to swivel and adjust to almost any angle. The Sabertooth is designed to latch onto larger ships. It literally uses these structures to physically connect to ships. Most of these Alliance ships are concerned with being as cost-effective as possible. And if you're thinking that tractor beams could do this job easier, you might be right, but that seems to be one of the most expensive and finicky types of technology out there for ship-to-ship warfare. We can deduce this by just how rare it is, with the Empire's interdictor being the most famous at using tractors to keep an enemy pinned down, and there were a few other examples from the Empire, but this was at the peak of Imperial power, and every time we see them being used, Rebel forces are able to break free with a variety of options, from using the gravity well effect against itself, to targeting specific parts of the tractor beam tech to destroy it. So as insane as that sounds to have a ship pounce on another and sink its teeth into it, I guess if it works, it works. Because this was all part of a well-oiled shipboarding plan. So the prongs get close, the grappling systems are fired, pulling it closer and making sure it can't wiggle, before the teeth actually make contact and break through the hull of the ship, causing a large wound or gash, which enabled the Zero-G assault troops to board these captured vessels. These were called the Venom Assault Squad, who would have to be some of the most elite forces out there. They would be heavily outnumbered, as even if all 300 passengers that could fit into the Sabertooth were part of these elite raiding troops, most ships have more than 300 troops on board, especially when the enemy you're going after is Imperial. Even though it's the Imperial remnant and then later fell Empire, they still have these enormous crews. So they would be strategically deployed to attack something like a ship's reactor, a prison quarters that might be housing VIPs, or just take the bridge. So because they're trying to move lightning fast and only hitting certain areas, I could see how a force could pull this off. And it is called the assault and rescue because this could also be done as a countermeasure, biting into an allied ship and launching a hostage rescue operation, and same idea if that VIP was on an enemy ship, using everything from smoke grenades to shields, vibro swords, and slicing tools to move through the ship at will. And they had to spread all this gear across their squads with medical equipment and suits for their VIPs so that they could get them back through the Zero-G space and into the Sabertooth. Their iconic all-black body armor allowed them to disappear in the background of space and knock out the lights in the ships while moving swiftly with their night vision-enabled helmets. Truly a spec-ops force that is only rivaled by the top Mandalorian strike teams. Its crew was 800 with those 300 passengers and a cargo capacity of 3,000 tons, or about 3,681 dewbacks. But don't worry, the incredible details are not over here. This really is one of the better thought-out ship designs I've covered. It does have 3 turbolaser batteries, 2-point defense, and 2 tractor beams, which is pretty decent for its size. A size that seems to be around 350 meters or 0.22 miles, about 1/5 the size of an Imperial Star Destroyer. And while yes, this is good firepower output pound for pound, especially when in a combined fleet, as a bunch of these could start to do some serious damage to larger capital ships, but it really was built to pounce on its prey. We don't get exact numbers for the top speed or power output, but we get the line, quote, the ship's powerful engines enable it to haul its catch quickly out of the area. So it's able to fully engage its thrusters to bully much larger craft, moving them away from the rest of the enemy fleet and isolating the target to run this time-crucial boarding operation. You gotta think the enemy would be trying to engage full thrusters at the same time, so I think this would mean that the Sabertooth was powerful enough to fire in reverse and mostly offset the engine output of many ships out there. And just imagine when multiple Saberteeths are all biting onto the same target at once. We don't get any stories that this actually happened, but I don't see why not. And if you've been wondering all this time why the enemy ship doesn't just fire on it while it's latched on, well, for one, most of its guns wouldn't be able to hit it no matter what section it was launched onto, but also the likely Mon Calamari engineers did think of this. And so its superstructure is designed to absorb closer range laser fire, and survived the sheer impact of this high-speed ramming into the enemy. Almost all of them survived these attacks unscathed, suffering minimal hull damage and spec-ops casualties. But in the rare case where the Sabertooth's teeth became trapped in the enemy, and just imagine when the enemy was being sabotaged and set to explode, or if it was just suffering a critical failure from the space combat in general, whatever the case, if the enemy was about to blow, the teeth themselves are connected via explosive bolts. So with the press of a button, you could jettison the teeth off in order to make a quick escape. So there is no risk of being blown up by firing on the hull with a combo of its smaller size covered in thick armor, and it can lose its teeth if need be, to make sure it doesn't go down with the enemy. Which all seems to confirm the theory I put forward in the Scythe video. I said with that ship we get two very odd things. 160 torpedoes, which is more torpedoes than all the ships combined in most fleets. And then you also get this odd front blade shape, so maybe these two unique things are connected. And I was saying that what if this whole front blade section that was filled with all the torpedoes could be fired away from the ship a split second after any chain reaction was detected. And then you see that the Sabertooth-class had these modular blade fronts. They're all made at the same time by the same engineers, and so I think combine all that with the explicit statement that these blades were attached via bolts that could be blown off at the press of a button, removing the risk from this unique teeth or blade design, and I'm feeling vindicated for trusting the genius of the Mon Calamari engineers. The only things I haven't mentioned is that standard for this era, it has a Class 1 hyperdrive and 1 year worth of consumables, and for its history, sadly we don't get many specifics on the daring rescue missions, just vague details on how it would work, but it basically is seen everywhere the Scythe and Shawshore ships were, being the generation after the New Republic's New Class program, which gave them the unified fleets after the NR took Coruscant and became the dominant power in the galaxy. A shift that was started by the MC-90, the first purpose-made warship by the Mon Calamari. And after the invasion of the Yuuzhan Vong, the NR did repel them, but at heavy costs that would set up the galaxy for another century of war. With the rise of the Fel Empire, Mon Calamari shipyards would be added again, with these three main ships of the Galactic Alliance, fighting on into what came to become the GA Remnant after the Empire became the new dominant power. I hope this breakdown made you appreciate the ship like I do. I think this, or something inspired by it, could make for a great episode in the new canon shows. Visually, it's great, just full speed ramming into a ship, the tendrils of grapple hooks guiding it in for an even perfect moment of the teeth piercing through the hull, for a space flight scene, of Venom assault squads breaching, and intense corridor shootouts on the way to capture some VIP. Let me know what you guys think about this ship. I've been seeing a ton of comments on how much people don't like this era of ship design. There is a lot of inconsistency, but I think if you just focus on what this was trying to achieve, it actually makes a lot of sense. All Star Wars ships have something that doesn't make sense. And so obviously the downward facing prongs are just to make it look cooler. You could do all of this probably a lot more efficiently if they were just pointing forward. All of the hull armor could be on the front of the ship, which is where you're getting most of the incoming fire, and you would just plow right into the enemy. But all in all, I was very impressed with the Sabertooth. Let me know what you think. If you want to read up more on it yourself, check out the Star Wars Legacy 2006 comics, 0 and 0.5. Those give you the behind the scenes look, and it features a whole bunch of times in that series. And the other details come from the Legacy era campaign guide. Please hit that like button, it really is the best way to help me out. For just $1, members get early access to videos. Subscribe to see more and check out these other videos, I'm sure you'll like them. But most important of all, remember, some things can look silly and still make sense, and the Force will be with you, always.